there is no escape, nor do we want it. We've come to thrive on it and each other. You can't get the adrenaline pumping without the terror, good people.
Just recently, we had a great conversation about Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 on my channel. It's been a while since I'd seen the film, but had a really great revisiting and enjoyed the film quite a lot. And even after doing that video, something still didn't feel right. I thought it would be time for me to actually give my perspective on Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, because it's one of the horror movies that has shaped me to the fan that I am today. A film that I go back with to my earliest memories. A film that deserves the same kind of treatment. So here I'd like to give my retrospective on Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. So here we are, guys. I had to talk about it. One of my absolute favorite horror movie sequels ever made. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. Now, this is a movie that I go a long ways back with. This was the Texas Chainsaw movie I used to watch at my grandma's house when I was very little. And perspective is really everything when you think about these movies, because this was the one that petrified me as a kid. This one just terrified me. I can remember this, back then, this movie seemed as serious as a heart attack. I was just mortified. But why is it one of my all-time favorite horror sequels? Why do I think it's one of the best horror sequels, period? In the way that the first one is a purely unadulterated horror film conceived from the mind of Tobe Hooper, it's paralleled with Part 2 to me. This is a movie that does not hold any punches, and it doesn't toe the line, so to speak. Aspect of what this movie was supposed to be, aka a black horror comedy, is what Tobe brought to screen. If you know me at all, if you've watched my channel for any bit of time, you know that horror comedy is my favorite subgenre of horror. I love a good horror comedy. Nothing beats it to me. That's why movies like Army of Darkness are some of my favorites. Return of the Living Dead is my favorite. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 is, without question, one of my favorite horror movies on the planet, and for very good reason. So this movie does pretty much everything I want from it. You have to have a great opening scene in a horror film. You have to. That's just the rules, you know? And how better of an opening sequence can you get than Texas Chainsaw 2? You've got your two yuppie punks driving across Texas. They're on the phone with Stretch at the radio station, causing a riot, causing a mess. They won't hang up the phone. They're shooting signs on the side of the road. And then sure enough, they call back later that night, and we get to hear their untimely deaths. And what an introduction to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre family in Part 2, with that truck driving backwards and Leatherface pulling the chainsaw, cranking it, and you know it's about to pop off. I just don't think you get much better than that. It's crazy, it's energetic, it's in your face, and the two words that are synonymous with 80s horror that can't be understated whatsoever, or overstated for that matter, Tom Savini. This is another reason this movie is my favorite. I'm a big Tom Savini fan. I think that his practical effects are and were perfect for the 80s. You've got other styles of special effects back then that I really appreciate. The Italian look was dirtier and grittier, nastier. You had other greats like K&B. You had other teams like Magical Media Industries, which is John Carl Buechler. But Tom had that right sensibility for the 80s movie, I think, and he did it. Nobody did it better than him, I thought. Texas Chainsaw 2 is a perfect example. The mask for this movie, for instance, Leatherface's mask is sectionalized. There's pieces from different faces all sewn together. He's got ears on his chin, on his neck piece, and he's got jaw lines up on his forehead. The mask is incredible. It's over the top, but so is the movie. And I'd be remiss not to mention the legendary Bill Moseley. We see him in this movie based on the short film, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which Tobe Hooper was a fan of and said, I need this guy for my film. We introduced the newest family member, Chop Top. Now, Chop Top gives Leatherface a run for his money, where the first movie, Leatherface was arguably the main attraction of the movie. In this one, Chop Top is a very, very close, if not, in some cases, people would agree that he is the main attraction of the movie. I think that Leatherface is still the main attraction of the movie, but man, Chop Top, this is amazing. I go back and forth with this on what my favorite Bill Moseley performance is, but Chop Top is equal parts hilarious and equal parts unnerving. And the best example is obviously when they invade the radio station scene about 20 or 30 minutes in, and our DJ girl Stretch learns that she's not going to be having an easy night. What a performance. What unnerving horror. But at the same time, it's hilarious. And I got to give the credit to Caroline Williams for giving us that moment of, I feel so scared for this woman, but this is so funny at the same time. It's just brilliant. Black comedy, dark comedy, if you will, in horror movies is... I'm not a filmmaker. I don't claim to be one. I've seen more bad ones than good ones. So to me, this seems like it's probably one of the hardest subgenres to do. And when it's done even pretty good, it still falls kind of short. But when it's done 100% properly, I don't think it could be beat. I really don't. Another thing I'll say is, as I've gotten into horror more and into specific labels and companies that put out movies, I can look at movies through a different lens. I can look at movies through a different light. Now, this movie was from Canon Pictures, okay? Now, if you know about Canon Pictures, you know their wild reputations as gunslingers who did what they wanted, when they wanted, threw caution to the wind with pretty much every film they made. Rushed things out to beat other studios, and just crazy stuff. They were renegades in the movie industry. Tobe Hooper had a interesting time during this. Now, Tobe Hooper's drug use is pretty well documented, and you would see movies like Life Force, which I love, but certainly show Tobe not in the most proper mental state. Now, I am in no way condoning drug use of any kind on this show, but I feel like Tobe was on the high end of low right here, where, you know, the drug fueling hadn't brought him over the edge to where his movies made almost no sense, like Life Force, which I still love. This movie's cohesive and amazing, and it's a perfect moment in time for Tobe Hooper's career, I think. Obviously, he took care of himself soon after that and got things straightened out, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, I have this whole new fond appreciation for it, knowing the circumstances, knowing that it was Canon Pictures and how they just, you know, go for it, Tobe. And Canon had no idea this was the movie they were getting. They thought they were getting the first movie. They thought they were getting the first one over again. But I am so happy that Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 has found such an enormous audience and is the purest definition of a cult hit. I mean, I don't know too many people that dislike Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I'm not saying that they don't exist. I'm sure thousands and thousands don't. But the people that love it like me are infinitely passionate about this film. And I think it's because it is purely unadulterated in what it's doing, being a full-force black comedy film. Obviously, Dennis Hopper is another highlight of the film and of the series, quite frankly. I love this series so much, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films, and I've done rankings, whether it been on the Firefly Family podcast or on my own channel. I don't think it gets much better than Part 2, besides the original. I think the original is, in fact, the greatest horror movie ever, period. But with ranking this franchise, the second best to me is Part 2. And I think that while there are other entries that are great and come close, this one is the second best ever. So I love this film. I just wanted to reminisce about it. I wanted to talk about this film. I can't talk about Leatherface 3 without giving Part 2 its moment, because it's the best to me. It deserves it. I've got to talk about it. So I love this film. I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre, period. This film is amazing. If it's been a while since you've revisited it, I urge you to please, for me, for CHH, dive into Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Learn about Canon Pictures. There's a great documentary called The Electric Boogaloo, the story of Canon Pictures. Watch that. You'll have a whole new appreciation for this movie. A whole new appreciation. Learn more about Tobe. Look up some documentaries. Look up things about his career, the things he's done. I think this is one of the best movies he ever did, period. I really do. And Toby's done some great stuff. He's done Funhouse. He's done, obviously, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's done Poltergeist. So many great films. Life Force. He's got a well-established career. Invaders from Mars. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 ranks above the highest to me for very good reason, because it's that good, I think. So definitely revisit the film for me. I do give it a perfect 10. I do. I love this film. It's everything to me. Yeah, there's the poster right there. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So, thank you guys for watching this video. I would love to know your thoughts on this film. I just think it's amazing. I could keep going and going, but I'm not going to. Let me know what your thoughts are on this amazing film. I think it is perfection. This is Christian Hanna Horror. Tell me which film you would like me to talk about next.